Welcome to the SheProp Pride panel. We are very excited to be here. And a huge thank you to AwesomeCon, Rose City Comic Con, and LeftField Media for including us. And of course, a big thank you to Geeks Out for hosting this incredible digital event. Of course, we're all sad that cons can't be going on right now, but at least we have opportunities like this to share our information and connect with people. We're very excited about it. This panel is being pre-recorded, so any comments that you make won't be answered in the panel, but some of us will be available when it's streaming to answer your questions in chat. So please feel free to let us know what sort of questions you have and what you want to know about cosplay and the LGBTQ community and SheProp in general. A little bit about SheProp is it is an online forum for women, trans, and non-binary people to talk about all things maker. So we have woodworkers, we have prop builders, we have people who do historical costumes and cosplayers. They come together to share information and the work that they do, and it's in a safe space. So we are very happy to have new members. So if anybody's interested, join us in the SheProp community on Facebook. We'd be happy to have you. So to introduce our panelists, I'm going to start with me. I'm AbbyCat Cosplay. You can call me Abby. I'm mostly known for my sewing. I do a lot of cosplay on a budget, found and upcycled cosplay. I also do or am known to take a sexier approach to some cosplaying characters. I'm great at networking, so you can always ask me questions about that, and I do compete, so I have some insight about cosplay competitions as well. I have been cosplaying for 6 years. My very first cosplay was Rainbow Dash. I borrowed a wig from a friend and made a dress and knew nothing about the character, which I don't recommend cosplaying a character you know nothing about. And then recently I did the Sheriff of Rottingham, which was a lot of fun, and I got to play with hair work. And now to introduce our amazing panelists, starting with...
Hi, I'm Black Betty Cosplay. My name is Jamila, and I've been cosplaying for about 12 years. I did a lot of work in theater, and then that eventually started doing cosplay specifically, not just costumes for fun. I do a lot of crossplay and gender bend. I'm also a photographer, so I do a lot of self-photography, so I can talk about that a lot, as well as exploring gender identity, how to do crossplay, makeup for crossplay, various things like binding, etc., especially as a plus size person, because that can be a little more difficult. And then adjusting costumes for body types, because I'm also a seamstress. And then just diversity in cosplay in general, whether it's for photography or putting a group together, and general activism. So yeah, my first cosplay was Audrey Ramirez from Atlantis Lost Empire, and most recent was Mad Moxie.
Okay, thank you for being here. So excited. Which I realize now that I said that, that sounded snotty, which it wasn't. I'm actually really excited you're here. You're great on panels. You were the first person we asked. Okay.
Oh, it's me. Hi, I'm Natasha of Fearless Photoworks. I'm a cosplay photographer and part-time cosplayer. I've been doing cosplay photography since 2008, 2009. And I can talk a lot about being a female photographer in the community and like when I was first starting out and it was kind of harder to get into the scene. I'm also a plus size person and I can talk about cosplaying while plus size and also working with plus size people because sometimes it's harder for plus size individuals to get photo shoots and photos of themselves they like because it takes a different approach and different posing and stuff. And I'm also an event planner. I am the main coordinator of Kawaii in Seattle, so I run Maho Shoujo Day and Kawaii Maid.
Now, can you just real quick tell us who's modeling in your pictures in this so we can give them a little bit of a shout out too?
Yes, so that was one of my earliest cosplay photo shoots, the one that says first cosplay shoot. It was actually from 2011, so it's not my very first one, but it is someone who's no longer cosplaying, but at the time she went by Sai. And then my recent one, that is Mama Samu Cosplay.
All right, thank you. Nicolle.
Hello, I'm Nicolle. I'm a part of Team Totoro Cosplay. It's a group of us that cosplay at all sorts of different conventions. My first cosplay there was Columbia. That was made with glue, copious amounts of glue, because I didn't own a sewing machine. Most recent one there is my Warrior Snow White, which was a kind of a self-inspired costume. I can talk a lot about team cosplay, imposter syndrome. I'm known for the person to get things done, although they might not be done correctly. So the quick and easy fix-its. I also do a lot of project management for the cosplay group that I'm with, and beginner cosplay, because I always still feel like a beginner, hence that imposter syndrome.
Great, thank you very much for joining.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's me. Hi, I'm Tans, also known as Tansuru Cosplay. I've been cosplaying off and on for, I guess, 18 years now. My first cosplay down there, Sailor Saturn, I did in 2001. And then I thought it was cool to have a comparison. I recently did Sailor Uranus last year, which was super cool. I love working with different fabrics. You can talk to me about working with P2C. I also like to switch out like making and buying costumes, so you can talk to me about that. I'm also a photographer, so I also have that expertise, and I have a great passion for advocacy and mental health. So I think mental health and cosplay is really important. So feel free to ask me about that.
Well, thank you all so much for joining to talk about cosplay and your experiences in cosplay. I am really excited and I just can't wait to jump in. But right now, the cosplay environment is very weird because of quarantining and the pandemic. So I just want to start off with, how are you handling cosplay in this environment where we can't go anywhere, we can't do anything, and we can't meet people? And I know, Jamila, you have been creating content. So what is your approach to that?
I decided to just plunge headfirst into TikTok. I don't know. I mean, I think part of it was just, I didn't have any motivation. I know there was definitely like a month I did nothing because all of my stuff was ready to go, and then the cons got canceled. So there was no drive. And then a couple of people I know were doing stuff on there. And so it's fun. I mean, it's a really neat way to show off your costume, and you can do things like duets, so you can cosplay with your friends virtually, essentially. So it was kind of just like a fun thing to do if you like acting or performing or just showing your costume in motion or doing makeup, because I know a lot of people will test their makeup and see how it like looks with movement, which is like going to a con anyway. So that's been really fun, and that's probably the most I've done with costuming during this time because there's nothing else going on.
Is anybody else being able to chip away at to-do lists or anything like that?
Well, at first I had a really hard time kind of just trying to get used to the like not going anywhere life, but I have been slowly working on some of my photography backlog because there's always some of it. And also I'm planning for future projects of some like no set dates obviously, but like just like, oh, these are shoots that I'll do eventually or projects. And then I also am thinking about kind of getting into TikTok, but I haven't quite yet, but I've got plans for it.
I downloaded TikTok. That counts. I don't know how to use it yet, but I've got it.
Baby steps.
Okay, so we did mention that we were going to be doing this panel in the SheProp community, and we were collecting some questions that people had. And so I'm going to jump into some of the things that we had interest in from them. And a lot of it was about picking your characters. So how do you pick what character you want to cosplay? And Nicolle, what is the approach that you take? Especially considering you do a lot of groups, so I know that gets complicated.
Yeah, we do a lot of groups. And so usually it is kind of a brainstorming session kind of at the beginning of the cosplay year. So we'll usually do one around January, and then maybe another one in April or May after Emerald City Comic Con to see kind of what we want to do for the cons later that year. And often we'll come up with kind of some ideas and kind of jump around and see what grabs people's attention. This year we were all excited to debut some Clue costumes at Emerald City. Of course, that was canceled. We have, most of the costumes and props are done, so those will come out at some point. I guess the reason why we're Team Totoro is we always have the Totoro costume. And so it's always, okay, what are we going to dress Totoro up as this year? Which does limit us a little bit. So we had some ideas. Not going to be able to do it this year. Not going to say what they were because maybe we'll do them next year. But that's always kind of the big one. And it's often for the group ones, are there enough people that are interested in it? Are there at least a core that's interested in it? And then some people that can come or go with support characters if they have time, if they can't make all the conventions. But yeah, it's just kind of a lot of brainstorming and going on who got their first pick last year. Let's give someone else first pick next year.
Does anybody else have a methodology that they tend to do, or the main points that they look for in a character to cosplay?
I tend to look for techniques or different things to do in a costume. I like to build up the skill. So maybe in one costume it'd be small, and then next costume it'd be bigger. In my Dora Milaje costume, it was like the first time I tried wrapping fabric around foam. And then I ended up doing this, which was the bigger project. So I like doing that, like picking a character that has aspects of a skill I want to improve on.
Okay. Does anybody find that they are drawn to a certain aesthetic? So either a historical era or a genre of media or anything like that they find themselves going back to again and again? If you don't, I do.
Go for it, Abby.
I like characters that make people laugh. That's my thing. If I think wearing the costume would be funny and people would find it funny, I find myself wanting to do that. That's why I did the Sheriff of Rottingham. That's why I did Carol Burnett. I love the comedy part of cosplay.
Nice. Most of the time it's like their outfits or personality type. Like some characters I'm like, the outfit's simple, but I like the personality enough that I'm like, that's them. Yeah, I'm gonna go for it. I put in a couple places that I'm CEO of Magic and Himbos, and I am drawn to those two categories. So that happens a lot.
I do not know what a himbo is. What is a himbo?
It's a guy, or it's supposed to be a guy because it's supposed to be like a variation on a male bimbo, which doesn't sound good, but it's supposed to be a guy who's not just buff, but also nice and kind, and kind of stupid.
Okay.
So it's like overall a good person.
Respect women. That's like,
yeah, and has to respect women. Yeah.
That sounds like a fun one to be also. I would enjoy being a himbo. I think
you would totally enjoy that.
Now, one genre of question we got a lot was really focusing on crossplay. And I know actually several of you do a lot of crossplay. So
I had some answers for the other question.
Never mind. We'll tell me more.
So when I do cosplay, I tend to go for either kind of like the lovable sidekick character, like Jake Kowalski from Fantastic Beasts, and or just like, I guess like kind of the best friend character, because I also did Harvey Bullock from Gotham, and he's not like a lovable sidekick, but he is a sidekick. And also I tend to go for facial hair for some reason, which is like a struggle. But then I also really like to embody like strong women, and also like if I see that there's like a plus size character and I like the character, then I'll be more inclined to want to cosplay them. Like Letty from Greatest Showman is on my list, and like I eventually want to do Ursula cosplay and stuff like that. And then also, as for photo shoots, if it's not like a client that I'm working with and it's just a personal project, I'll usually pick something out depending on a fandom I really want to assemble people for. I also really like doing groups of like fashion, historical fashion of an anime or show that I really like right now I'm working on a Sailor Moon Rococo group, and originally I was thinking about assembling the group and only photographing it, but then I actually was like, I'm going to be in the group, so I'm going to be the Saturn in the group. And then also I'll think of like what could be a really interesting, epic photo shoot to put together that's going to be really complicated, because sometimes I hate myself. And then I'll do that. Like in 2015, I convinced 30 people to go to the sand dunes of Washington, and I did a Mad Max Fury Road tribute photo shoot and music video.
That's awesome.
So extreme and then aesthetics.
Oh my God.
So we did want to focus, or at least circle back around to the crossplay aspect of that. I actually got a lot of questions about that. They want to know what draws you to crossplay or crossplaying against your identified gender. Also, they were wanting to know, a big question was, do you notice a difference in the way you are treated when you're doing male characters versus female characters?
Oh, yeah.
Which,
Oh yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
it sounds like everybody has something to say. Let's start with Tans. What's your take on that?
I'm drawn to well, it's weird saying that's crossplay, I guess. Yeah, I'm drawn to doing crossplay because of, well, being non-binary, I feel like everything's crossplay now. But like if I'm doing male characters, it's very interesting that like people don't know what to do with you if you're like crossplay as a guy sometimes, especially if you're Black at the same time. They're just like, whoa, what the hell? So photographers are very standoffish a lot of times. And then if you're cosplaying as a girl, then like if you'll switch this the other day, it's like night and day. Like they're just like, everybody knows what to do. It's very interesting how gender roles inform just that basic interaction of like how people will approach you, talk to you, and if they're interested in your costume.
And anybody else want to chime in?
The few times that I've done crossplay, I've noticed a lot less kind of objectification when dressing up as a male character. I think my favorite one was at one point I made a side comment with my husband that I always see females dressing up as Jareth from Labyrinth, but I never see males dressing up as Sarah. And he's like, you make it, I'll wear it. And I kind of said, okay. So, we made him the beautiful ball gown, and he is very long, gave him the full wig, and he had a very long beard. He did not shave. The beard was visible. The chest hair was visible. From the back, he just looked like a very big, tall Sarah. And then he'd turn around, and there was this very masculine male. And I think it was one of my favorite experiences was watching a little child behind going, oh, look, telling the mom, look at the pretty princess. And then he turns around and just the look of shock. And then the mother saying, men can dress up as princesses too. We've had this conversation. And I love things like that. It was it was a fun cosplay. It was something we had never seen done and wanted to kind of explore that. Mm-hmm. But the few times that I've dressed up as male characters, it is very different. Photographers approach you differently. They're less likely to approach you. The poses are usually different. It's very obvious to me, the difference that you get from people.
Yeah.
Jamila, I feel like you've got something to add.
I kind of in the same boat as Tans. Like for me, it's like it is crossplay because for the most part, I visibly identify as female. That's something I can't get around easily. Yay. But for me, it's like just a way of exploring another side of me because I do identify as non-binary, or at least gender fluid. So it's something that I always wanted to do, and for a while it was really difficult because it wasn't always like successful, and that would be upsetting. And as it like you did it more, you got more comfortable with it and it got better. But like sometimes it would go really well, and either the response is no one would care, or just ignore you, especially some photographers. They would just be like, oh, look, there's a hot lady, forget this. And I'm like, I spent like 5 hours on facial hair, like, look at me. And then other times you would kind of get a little crushed if someone just like was like, oh, it's a girl. And you're like, thanks. Like, okay, that's not what was supposed to happen. So it's been like, sometimes it's been great. Like, some people are just super excited to see you do the character, and I accept it and like identify it, and they're super excited. They tend to be less creepy about it, especially with male photographers. Sometimes though, you do get unwanted female attention, and that can be weird. Because I guess they're a little more comfortable, but sometimes it's a good thing. Like, they feel more comfortable to approach you because they're less nervous about it. But sometimes people go a little too far. So it varies. But yeah, it's definitely a different experience than when I dress up as like a overtly female character with my goods on display. It's like, zoom, all this like random attention you didn't want, and then like the opposite, they just pretend like you don't exist.
So to kind of offshoot on this question, gender isn't the only thing that we get judged on. So what other things do you notice about cosplaying, whether it's being more exposed or more modest, or being a character that's not the same race as you, or not the same body type as you? Is there anything that you notice about how you're treated in public spaces when you are maybe going off type a little bit?
Absolutely. As a plus size person, and a pretty large plus size person, like, I get a lot of like concern shaming of like, oh, do you really want to wear that? Do you really think that you should display your body in that way? Or like, even I've had friends that are well-meaning, but they're like, oh, we're putting a group together and you should probably only be this person, you know, like only like the fat person, or only this. And so I get a lot of policing. And also, when I've done male cosplays, I've definitely gotten less of that, because initially someone will think, oh, it's a guy and they're just cosplaying. And there's a lot less judgment, I feel, for like larger masculine people. There is still, but like when you are female or femme presenting and you're plus size, there's just so much more judgment of what you're allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to chime in? Well, I can say one thing to tip it. I do sometimes take a more, I'll call it sexy approach to cosplay. I tend to only do it in photo shoots, because even though I would take a picture and post that picture, and who knows how many people would see it, and it's public and there's nothing I'm ashamed of, wearing that stuff in public where somebody could approach you is something I am so uncomfortable doing. And I have worn a costume to a con that I didn't think in my head, this is a sexy costume, you're going to feel uncomfortable. I thought it was perfectly appropriate. It was a dress with some cleavage. That was it. And I have never been more uncomfortable than walking around in that costume. Like, I glued chest hair, and it was to myself, and it was very itchy, and I would do that every day of the week before I put that dress on in public again.
Yeah, I think that there's a big part of it is like, you can feel amazing in something and you love it and you love the way you look in it, but there is a difference when you suddenly get it into a public setting, because people feel entitled to tell you how they feel about it, or walk up to you, or take your picture without asking, or maybe even touch you or grab you. And like, that's like, you didn't sign up for any of that. You just wanted to feel good and vibe out in your outfit.
Exactly. Yeah, I do pinup work as well, and like, so I'll do like super sexy versions for photography. I've done it occasionally for cons, and sometimes I regret it. Like, sometimes I was like, I did Dee from Rat Queens, who's not really that exposed. Like, she's got a top on, her legs are out, that's it, and I'm wearing tights, so it's not even like my legs are actually exposed. And we left a con to go do a photo shoot nearby, and the amount of comments I got, like, just in that short 2-block walk, was mind-boggling. And I was like, I'm actually like more clothed than wearing a swimsuit, and yet somehow all the comments, similar outfit, Lady Diane from Seven Deadly Sins, which is basically like a little jumper and your butt's kind of out. But like, I had a giant hammer, so most people shut up, didn't say anything. But it's still also, it was just like, but I love the outfit, but the attention was just so much that you were just like, I don't want to wear that in public.
Yeah, it's very weird how
Yeah.
public online is very different than public in person,
Yeah.
where somebody can approach you.
Yeah.
Similarly, I will usually have a pep talk for people that are newer to photo shoots. Like, you're going to get attention, and you're going to get attention you're not used to, and you let me know at any time when you need to stop, because it is hard to adjust to.
Yeah.
So I have been cosplaying for 6 years, and in this group, that makes me a babe in the woods, because I am the newbie compared to all of you. So when you started, in some cases, 19, 18 years ago, how was the scene different? And that can be about getting access to resources to create your cosplays, or just the acceptance in the world. What sort of changes have you seen?
Oh, the conventions have changed.
So much.
I mean, I know when I first started doing and it wasn't even called cosplay at the time. It was just wearing your Halloween costumes to the conventions. You know, the conventions I went to, you know, they were small, they were in hotels. Most people weren't in costume. You were, you know, they may have the masquerade night, but those were, you know, judged on all sorts of things that I wasn't even interested in. I just wanted to wear something fun that I don't get to wear every day. And so it was, you know, it was kind of, you know, okay, what did I wear to Halloween? And I'll go wear it out to a convention and have, you know, maybe a couple people take photos. Very, very different. I remember that, like, the first time I wore a costume, and we specifically made a costume for a con, and then the reaction that we got. Again, it was probably our first group cosplay too. It was, I want to say 2007, and a bunch of us dressed up as the Yip Yips from Sesame Street. And I think it was the first time we had ever seen anybody do that. And the reactions we got were just amazing. And it's like, this is awesome. And so that's kind of what started actually creating the first costumes for us. And I don't think I heard the term cosplay till I'd have to look up when it entered the lexicon. It was just costumes. But yeah, I think that has changed a lot. It's a lot easier to get resources. It's a lot easier to learn how to do things. It's a lot easier to research things. You know, we now have movie costume makers publishing their patterns for us and telling us what fabric they got. And I remember walking into a fabric store and talking about how we were going to be making this cosplay, and the woman there saying, well, you didn't hear this from me, but you might want to use this particular fabric because of other people who have purchased it who shall not be named. Okay, you know, it's much more out there. You go to the fabric stores and they're like, oh, what cosplay are you? You know, it's you know, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Like, I wasn't heavily involved in it when I knew it was going on. Like, I had friends doing it and I just didn't go. So for me, it was, I think, like, the first con I really went to was like in 2008 or something like that. So it was one of the big ones. So it was still a big event, but there still weren't a ton of people cosplaying at it. And locally, the cons were still kind of small, and it was really hard to find wig options outside of like your average store, or a really bad wig that would like Halloween grade. Oh, it was so bad. But now there's like tutorials everywhere. Fabric stores are catering to it. Like, you can get patterns for anything you could possibly think of. Like, it's a whole other ball game. But then also, like, the scene in general, like, there's more people that you see at it of different walks of life. Because, like, before, if I told someone like, yeah, I cosplay, they'd just look at you and be like, woo, you're weird. And now they're like, oh, dope, you cosplay? And I'm like, okay, that's kind of freaky, because they're like your boss at work.
Yeah, my boss told me that she thinks my life is more fun than hers, and I'm not going to correct her because she's told me stories. I agree. It really is.
Well, and the social media aspect to it now. I mean, when I started, the idea of having a brand or a cosplay name or it was it was just foreign. It never would have occurred to us to have any sort of social media presence about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I didn't start cosplaying casually until about 2010, but I had friends that were cosplaying as early as like 99 in like 2001, like when I was in high school, and we did call it cosplay because I feel like the term kind of started at anime conventions, but it was very, very, very niche at the time. And I also went to like comic shows and Comic-Con, and very, 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 very few people were getting into costume at the time. It was kind of thought of as like, oh, basically that's something only the Trekkies do, or like some really, really or like really die-hard, like weird, awkward comic fanboys that are like putting on Spider-Man spandex. It was like really frowned upon, and it wasn't until more of the, from what I personally noticed, at least around here in Washington, it wasn't until like more of the anime kid scene started going to Emerald City and getting into some of the like Western cartoons to cosplay from, like Young Justice League and stuff like that, that I noticed the scene at like Emerald City Comic Con specifically start to skyrocket into cosplay, and around, and then like we were getting like cosplay TV shows and stuff like that, and it really grew exponentially. And I think a big part of that too was the growth of social media as well, and it was a lot more available. And then also wigs, like I still have some of my 2010 wigs, and they are just, I need to throw those things away. Everything got significantly better as far as like access to supplies and like things feeling more like readily available for kind of the newbies as well. I would say around like 2012, 2013.
Definitely.
So just so you guys know how much of a babe in the woods I am, I didn't start cosplaying until I saw a TV show on the Sci-Fi Network about it. It's bad.
It opened up, it literally opened up so many doors.
Yeah.
But it did make me think that like you had to compete and you had to make everything. Like there was some stuff there.
The one and only competition we've ever been in was Heroes of Cosplay.
Yeah, there were certainly some drawbacks to it, but overall it opened a lot of doors. But then there was a lot for a while there. I think things are kind of starting to even out again, but for a while there was a lot of like, well, you have to be like cosplay, and you have to compete, and you have to be at these certain levels. And I'm glad that that's kind of calming down a little bit.
So we are going to switch gears a little bit because we are here for the Pride panel. So we do want to talk about some issues that are impacting the LGBTQ plus community. And we did get some questions from the public, the general public, about that specifically. So one thing that did happen when we were putting this together is I would reach out to people to ask to participate. And I did get some pushback from people who were hetero presenting, whether it's because they were ace or bi or pan. There was a number of people who said, I don't think I have enough to contribute because I have hetero privilege. And I'm one of them. I'm married to a man, but I am a bisexual person. So what would you say to people, or what are your thoughts on that kind of feeling in the LGBTQ community, that they don't feel like they should have a voice in it? I'm going to put some pressure on Nicolle to answer this one because she was one of those people who said that.
I am one of those people. As someone who's someone on the ace spectrum, and married to a bisexual male, and biromantic, panromantic, I kind of use those words interchangeably. My first thought was, do I have a place? And as I kind of talked to Abby and thought through it, I'm like, there's a lot of ace denial, there's a lot of bi erasure, and those voices are important. And it's, I know a lot of times, as someone who does have that hetero presenting privilege, you hear comments because people think you're safe to comment to, that are like, hey, you've just insulted me. You've just insulted me and you've got to do that step of saying, hey, we're here, you can't forget about us just because I have a husband, I'm femme presenting. And so I do think it's important to kind of keep those voices in the dialogue, because they do have feelings, and there is a point where we have to be included. There's a lot of places where if it is a queer event, they won't let you bring, a non-queer partner. And that's always, that's a shot to the heart. So.
There's an incredible amount of gatekeeping within the queer community that has been a problem for many years, and I don't like that at all. I am personally identify as bisexual because pansexual wasn't really a term that I knew a lot growing up, and I just feel like bisexual fits me more. But then there's a lot of bi erasure, or then there's a lot of assumptions about what bisexual means. Like, I'm not transphobic because I identify as bisexual. And there's a lot of just minimizing, or like, oh, you're clearly like too straight to be with a woman because you'll cheat on them and stuff like that. And it's a big problem, and it's something that I've been fighting against for many years. And I don't know how to fix it other than it's important more than ever to raise up those voices that people try to silence.
And I can relate to that a lot. Like, I'm bi. I also say pan, so I kind of use them interchangeably because pan's a newer term that I kind of like a little bit more, especially since my gender identity is a little more fluid. But yeah, I'm in a marriage with a heterosexual man as far as he defines himself. And most of my life, I always questioned whether or not I was straight. I had interest in other people that weren't male, so I was interested in both genders. But I had people like tell me like, no, there's no way you're that, and I was like, oh, I guess they're right. I don't know. They know. They must know better than me, right? And then I've met people who've talked about it, and they're like, that's not fair. Like, it's your identity. And I was like, you know what? Because of that, like thinking about that, I'm like, yeah, I should say that. Like, there's no reason I can't tell people how I feel, and like let that be known, because otherwise other people will feel the same way I did, that like there's something wrong with them, or maybe they might think there's something but they're a liar, and that's weird. And I know a lot of people who I've had similar conversations with who have come to that same realization, that they're like, you know what, why can't I claim who I am? Life changes all the time, and you don't know what your next situation is going to be. So why can't you address what you are and find support in your community? So yeah.
Yeah, like I personally veer towards, like, as far as preferences go, I prefer, more femme. And so people are like, oh, well, you're just gay. And I'm like, no, you don't get to tell me what I am and who I love. And I believe that I will fall in love with whoever I fall in love with. But yeah, in the past, I've mostly been in what would be, queer coded as like lesbian relationships, but that doesn't take away all of my identity. And I've literally had someone be like, oh, you're just a closet gay person and you're like clinging on to this like bisexual title. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. Like, just let people be themselves. It's not even your business anyway.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with all of that. I identify as bisexual, and it's a minefield sometimes navigating it. But I feel like the cosplay community is also, for the difficulties, is also one of the safer places for people to be. A lot of people who might be trans women find a lot of safety in being able to cosplay and express their gender identity at cons. I know I've talked to a number of them who wouldn't be able to do this outside of cons, so I think it's a really safe space too. I know I was able to explore a lot of my own gender identity just being in conventions, and I think I never would have come to this realization without like cosplay being my main vehicle for that. So like it is difficult, but also like it is such an essential space. Like you can say, even though there's still a lot of like bias and issues, like you can say that you're bisexual, you can say that you're trans, and people are more accepting than outside of like these spaces. So we definitely have a lot of work to do, but it's still like a very essential place for a lot of people to find who they are.
It definitely is. Like, I know for me, it was like one of the factors that really helped me like feel a lot stronger with how I define myself with my gender. Like, I always knew it a little bit. Like, college was a time where my college was really open with it. In fact, it's the first time I did drag. So that was like kind of like made it really clear to me. And then once I left college, I didn't really have the opportunity to do it. And then I was like, I can do this in cosplay. And I met a bunch of people who were doing it. I was like, oh my God, I can do this. And then like, I realized how important it was to me, like to just explore that. And so it was really nice because like, you can't always do that at work. You can't always do that at like a special event where you might be like, I might dress up, because people might not respond very well, versus like, if you find your community, they're more accepting, like a lot more accepting.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I would say that there's less policing of like my sexuality and stuff like that in the cosplay community than other places, because I think that a lot of queer people do flock to the cosplay community because it's a chance to express yourself in so many different ways and dress up and do whatever and be someone else for a little while if you want to. So I definitely think that there's work that needs to be done within the cosplay community as well, but it's less than like outside of it.
Right.
Now, how do you think people can support members of the LGBTQ community? If somebody was saying, I want to be an ally and I want to be a better ally than what I currently am, is there anything you would encourage people who express that? Anything you would encourage them to do or say or participate in?
Listen to people's pronouns.
Yes.
That's a big one.
It's
Listen
a
to
big
people's
one.
pronouns.
It's a
Top
huge
of the list
one.
right there.
And I think the other one is don't assume based on appearance or relationship what their identity or gender identity or sexual identity is.
Exactly.
You know, don't make assumptions based on appearance or relationship status.
Yep.
Non-binary is not woman-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
Non-binary does also not mean it has to be androgynous.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went over you. But
No,
I think
No, it's good.
I was gonna say, be ready to listen and learn, and also don't put the burden of like educating you entirely on like your friends or the community. Like, there's a lot out there, there's a lot of resources, and you know, maybe try to do some of your own research, and if you get really confused or stuck on some things, then like see if a good friend of yours or someone be like, hey, do you have, you know, the emotional energy to like maybe answer some questions for me, but like don't just assume. And also like respect people's pronouns and don't dead name people, and you know, there's always an adjustment period, but don't make it about you when you mess up, because like I'm personally cisgender, but I know like a lot of my friends, when they're messing up around someone, I'm like, hey, don't be like, I'm so sorry, I'm trying so hard, and oh my gosh, like, do you understand how hard this is? I'm like, no, it's not about you. Just say sorry, correct yourself politely, and move on with the conversation, because it's not about you.
So that does kind of a round of applause. We have seen in the recent years, probably last 10, 15 years, we have seen an influx of queer people in media, in pop culture. Has that had any sort of impact on you? Have you noticed that, and has it been internalized in any way?
I think it has. I know it's not official canon, but I really do headcanon Beau as being a trans man. And like that's a lot of the reason I decided to cosplay him, other than he's like super adorable. But like there's just things like that, you know, even in She-Ra there's even though it's an alien, but there's Double Trouble, you know, there's that representation coming on. I think it's just it makes it a lot easier to find a reflection. I feel like the same way with like more and more Black characters being released and being included, which is amazing, because you don't have to deal with all of the things that might come with cosplaying somebody who might be interpreted as white. So I think it's really affirming.
Yeah, I think it's just been really good. Like, I am really into animation geared at kids and just in general younger people, and it's just been like absolutely amazing to see how much it's progressed. Like in my childhood, you probably could like name like 5 queer characters. It's probably it. Like it's really low. Or it was an adult thing. Like it was an adult subject matter. That was like your other option. And so it's just like amazing. You can be like, I can list like a whole bunch of TV shows with more than one character that's like either non-binary, trans, or in not cisgender or not heterosexual, and you know, like, and saying it verbally, not just like the creators afterwards are like, guess what, they were gay. You're like, sure about that. Like
So-
they're doing that, and that's really amazing, not just for me but like for the kids that are watching that, who are like, you know what, I can, if I'm a little boy, be a princess character, and if I want to decide that I am a girl, I can be that, and that's accepted by these characters in this show. Like, why shouldn't people and my friends accept that too? And that's like amazing.
Let's name them. What are some shows that we think show that? Let's give a little bit of plug to that. A sneaker one that I love is Bob's Burgers.
Yes. Yeah.
Bob is bi.
Yep.
Canonically, I love that about
I
him.
love that so much.
I love it. He is into marshmallow. He thinks he loves marshmallow so much. I love that. And also just the way the kids are presented, where Gene is what he is, we don't know, but because he's a kid, but maybe he's gender fluid, maybe he's gay, he's exploring, maybe he's he just is free to be who he is, and his parents just support it. They make him that Queen Latifah costume for Halloween.
Yes, they did. They did it right.
They cheered for him when he showed up in it, and they were like, "You look great, Gene." And that's one that I think is really great. Anybody else want to?
She-Ra is a big one. Steven Universe is also a big one. And a newer one that I just started watching that has some great representation all around is Kipo and the Age of the Wonder.
I was going to say that one.
Yeah, it's so good. Cannot recommend it enough.
Schitt's Creek.
Oh, yeah. That one's really good.
So to transition a little bit again, I have my questions written down in sections. Moving on to what?
Can I make a comment really quick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that like representation matters, and also the way that representation is shown really matters, because I feel like when we were younger, all we had was like queer-coded, not actually official, queer-coded villains. And so being represented in a way that isn't a villain, like there's a reason that that so many of our generation love the villains. They're fabulous, but in the past, you were only allowed to have queer tendencies or be outright queer if you were a villain, and you lost in the end. And that is changing, and it is wonderful. And it makes me really happy, but it gives me a lot more hope for younger generations not having as many issues of like, I'm bad because I'm this way. And that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. And let's be honest, Ursula is the best villain.
I love Ursula. Every fiber of my being.
Oh, you were going to add something?
Oh, I just really wanted to plug Killing Eve.
Which one?
Killing Eve.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I couldn't quite hear. I'm sorry. It cut out.
My internet sucks. Killing Eve.
Yeah.
Oh,
Killing Eve. Oh, yeah, with Sandra Oh.
So good.
Yeah, that
Good
does
point.
some things to a person. Oh, okay. So I did also want to talk a little bit about the meeting friends and the community part of it, particularly focusing on photo shoots, because we do have a photographer on our panel, and we also have people who do a lot of photo shoots on our panel, and more than one, yes. Actually, 3. There's 3, and Nicolle can be seen walking around a con with a camera as well. I think the only person here who's not a photographer is me.
I follow around behind my husband, who's got the cosplay photographer.
So, when it comes to doing photo shoots, what do you look for in a photographer to work with? What do you look for in a model if you are the one behind the camera? And more importantly, how do you start to develop those friendships and those relationships to find somebody to work with and keep coming back?
No
I
pressure.
think
Networking.
Somebody?
I mean,
I'll go ahead and start. I think it can be incredibly hard for people to approach photographers sometimes. And there's a lot of what is like etiquette of like, is it okay to ask a photographer for my picture or whatever? And I think it's okay to ask. Don't assume that someone's going to take your picture, especially for free. But there are a lot of hobbyists out there as well. And I think that like Facebook groups or other groups where people are talking, because it can be really hard to figure that out in person just at a con. So joining groups ahead of time to kind of see like who's doing photo shoots, or maybe like other groups that you can meet up, or if there are like photo shoot meetups, a good way to start if you're not quite ready for like a one-on-one photo shoot is to go to those like fandom meetups where a lot of people are taking pictures and you can practice poses or anything else when there's like 10 other Sailor Moons in the picture and you don't feel as much pressure, and then you can kind of ease your way into doing a one-on-one photo shoot. And as far as like picking photo shoots, like I have passion projects, and I'll kind of look around and I have a very large extended network of cosplayers over the 12 years I've been in the scene. So I usually can kind of tap into my own network, but if there's a character that I'm missing, I'll usually look into those Facebook groups and kind of try to find someone to recruit someone local. And then as far as like, cause I also do paid photo shoots, I do not, I will work with anyone. Like I do not like, I know that it can be a problem in the community, particularly sometimes with male photographers where people feel like they only work with like a set body type or anything. And I think it's very important that you do not gatekeep who you'll work with, especially because like I'm providing a service and being paid for that service if it's a paid shoot. And I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, you know, I'm too fat to get photo shoots even if I'm paying for them, because I've had people actually ask me like, will you, especially because I also do like cosdoir or cosplay boudoir shoots, and people are like, would you shoot me, or like am I just like not, you know, cute enough to do that? And I'm like, I will work with anyone as long as they're treating me with respect.
One thing that I find helpful is just asking the question. Just say, I want to work with you. What would that cost? Because I know there's a lot of nerves about I want to work with somebody, but I don't know if they charge. I don't know if what their cost would be. I don't know if I can afford it. So yeah, it's kind of an awkward question to say, I'm on a budget. How much do you cost? Yeah. But get it out there. Just say it.
And that question can be a lot easier to ask over the computer. If you're having a hard time just like coming up to me or another photographer and being like, I want to work with you, how much do you charge? You can get their card, or if you already know their page and they have a page, you can message them on social media and be like, hey, I'm really interested in your work. How much do you charge? Or are you opening? Are you booking right now? You know, stuff like that. Because like it can be a lot easier to ask. Like it can be hard to ask in person. And I just try to maintain a very friendly, open exterior when I'm at con or anywhere, and I consider myself pretty friendly and approachable anyway. But I just try to keep that open. But I have had a lot of people be like, I saw you at con and I've been following your work for like 5 years, but I was too afraid to like go up to you. So now I'm messaging you in person. And I'm like, well, that's really sweet, but like you can come say hi to me. But like I'm glad that you messaged me, because now we can actually have this conversation.
I think on the cosplayer side of things, even though I'm also a photographer, I think there is definitely some nervousness about approaching a photographer as a cosplayer, because it feels like, I don't know, not like self-absorbed, but it feels like that. So sometimes people have expressed that they're like nervous at just like walking up to a photographer and be like, will you take my picture? Especially since it's usually free. Yeah. So that's kind of weird.
But usually
yeah. So it's like, I think I get why that's nerve-wracking for some people, but like if you do have a photographer approach you, if you're just at a con, like ask for their card, or if they have a contact, or like swap social media. So at least later, if you like what they did, you could always like contact them, because I know that works really, really well. And that's how I've met some new people. Like they took a free photo and then I was like, oh, I'm going to save their info and like tap them later and be like, hey, are you doing private shoots?
Yeah.
So yeah, that can help. And like if they do photo booths, because sometimes cons will have free photo booths, that's another way to like meet a photographer. But meetups are also really, really good because there's tons of them there. You might have a friend who knows somebody there and they might introduce you. You can always ask your cosplay friend to introduce you to a photographer, especially if they're braver than you.
Also, you can ask your cosplay friend for recommendations, because
for references.
because doing some more sexy stuff, sometimes I am approached by people, and sometimes that can give you the real skeevies. You're like, no. But you can then look through their Instagram, see who they've worked with, see who you know, and say, hey, I was approached by this person. What was your experience like?
Yeah.
Oh, I think a vetting process and like tapping into your community to be like, hey, is this person like good to work with? Did you have a good time? Are they safe to work with? Because the reality is that we have predators in our community, and it's important to keep each other safe.
And I know.
And also, I feel like there's this kind of unwritten rule going back to the getting free photos at con, which I call haul shots because it's usually not like taking the time to like a full photo shoot. I think that there's this kind of idea that only a photographer can go up to a cosplayer, and like a cosplayer shouldn't go up to a photographer and be like, will you take my picture? Because it can kind of seem presumptuous. And I think that that's a kind of a pervasive thought right now. So yeah, it can be better if you have like a friend that already knows that photographer, and that friend goes up and be like, hey, can you like take some pictures of my friend? Or like, will you take some pictures of us? Because I've had a lot of friends do that. Like, hey, my friend's wearing a new costume and like they don't really know you, but can you take a picture of them really quick? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. Like, as long as someone's not assuming that I'm going to give them like a whole private photo shoot for free, like I'm happy to take haul photos, especially for people that don't get photos nearly as often because they're not what's considered like conventionally attractive, and they're not having that like whole flock of photographers around them. Like, I want those people to feel seen and valued as well, because they do have value.
I think that's probably like one of the most complicated parts of that, is that I've definitely gone up to a photographer to try to approach them and had them like literally give me the cold shoulder. Especially the black cosplayer or a plus size black cosplayer or not wearing a sexy outfit. I've definitely gotten that look where I'm like making eye contact and I'm like, and then they just like pretend I don't exist. And that's, it's soul crushing. So it's like, you're like, you spent 5 hours getting ready and you think you looked cool. And then this person can't even give you the time of the day. And then you watch them run over to this other person and you're like, thanks. That was nice. Like, so I totally get where it can get like a little difficult. So I'm like, whenever I'm like in photographer mode, I will just go up to people because I'm like, I know it's scary for me. So I'm like, I will jump in there, even if it's like a quick shot. Like, I think that tends to help. So it's like, I think like in the right setting, it can be different. Like, I know if it's like a Geek Girl Con or something that's like a little less skeevy photographer time. I'm like more willing to go up to photographers in that kind of situation, but I've definitely like at some cons like ECC, I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna approach strangers because
well, it's incredibly difficult. I mean, when I do take my camera out, which is very rarely because I live with someone who's a much better photographer than I am, back to the imposter syndrome. But I will often go out of my way to find the kids who I, have cute costumes on and take, ask the parents if it's okay to take their picture. And those that are kind of sitting off to the sidelines, because I'm just doing it for fun. I'm just practicing, trying to get a little bit better, learning my camera a little bit. And so it's like, I will often go out of my way to try to find those people who don't have the hordes of photographers around them, just to make, their experience better, and then show them the picture. And if I can, I have the ability to then send it from my camera to them. So that's kind of my fun way of A, talking to people that I wouldn't normally talk to as an introvert and a shy person, and B, trying to make somebody's con a little bit better.
That's my introvert trick too.
I just like to go up to people and talk to them about their costume, and I do like to just because it is so hard to go up to someone and be like, take my picture, because it feels really demanding, or there is that possibility of someone giving you the cold shoulder, because I've had people give me the cold shoulder when I'm not in photographer mode and I'm in a cosplay as a plus size person. Like, it's hard to find people that want to take your picture. So I also go out of my way to just try to take pictures of a lot of different people.
It can be sometimes so disheartening when you work so hard on a costume and you feel amazing and you get out there on the con floor and it's like your wallpaper. It can be so disheartening. So
going through a convention and having not a single person ask for your photo, not a single person recognize it, not a single person comment on it. And I'm like, why did I go to the effort?
It happens and it hurts, but that's, we should not compare ourselves to other people. And just because we worked hard, it doesn't mean the person standing to our left or our right did not also work hard.
And I think it's important to kind of evaluate why you're wearing that cosplay, because validation is incredibly great. And but it's also if you're hinging your happiness in that costume on being recognized or being liked or how many photos you'll get taken in it, you're setting yourself up for misery, no matter how amazing your cosplay is. And I have had that kind of heart-to-heart with several friends being like, why are you making this cosplay? Are you making it because you genuinely love it and it doesn't matter if you only have selfies in it, or are you trying to do it because you think this is the thing that will get a lot of attention? Because you have to do it because you want to make that cosplay. Because at the end of the day, you have to be happy with all of this time and effort you've put into it. And if you don't feel that way because not enough people wanted to take your picture, like don't set yourself up for unhappiness. Like absolutely, I think that we need to do more as a community where more people feel, you know, valued in that con space, but like just please make sure that you're making it for the right reasons and your own happiness and your own joy of making it. And then also put yourself out there into those meetups so that you're with like-minded people that will recognize that cosplay and will be like, oh my gosh, I love that you're cosplaying this like niche character from this show and I never see people do that, and stuff like that. Because it's set yourself up for success and a happier con experience. But yes, I agree that it is really disheartening to go out there and not have your cosplay, you know, like seen in the way that you were hoping it would be. But that's why it's also important to kind of like, I think a lot of prep work before con of like, are there meetups I can go to, or am I gonna book a private shoot or anything like that is a better way to make yourself set up for a happier con experience as well. And I'm not telling people like lower your expectations. I just want them to like set themselves up to have a happier time.
I have worn obscure niche costumes before and shown up to a con and thought, if one person recognizes me, I am going to lose my mind. And then you get your one person who is like, Wind Ranger, you're great. And then I'm like, oh, it's a success. Even if it's just somebody walking the opposite direction that goes, and then they keep on going.
That one person to recognize, and or what you think will be an obscure costume, and having somebody all the time commenting on it, like, I had no idea people knew this one.
So kind of what Natasha was talking about transitions nicely into some other things I wanted to bring up, which is what's some advice that you would give people who are wanting to start out in cosplay or in cosplay photography or in cosplay photo shoots? Just some rules of thumb that you want to keep in mind to make it a good experience.
I was going to tack that on to the last thing, but it works for this. Make sure you look ready for photos. If you have like your hands full, or like you may need to take off your glasses, you know, you can keep them on if you want to. But if it looks like you need to prepare for everything and you're not ready, photographers won't really go for you because it looks like you're not ready. I found that if I like just leave as much stuff out of my hands as physically possible when I'm in cosplay, like just try not to do any, like have a bunch of stuff, it's a lot easier for people to be like, oh, you're in costume. And if like at the very last thing, sometimes I've noticed if somebody is taking your photo, like if you have your friend just like taking your photo, you'll have other photographers come because they're like, oh, this is we're taking a picture of. But just making sure you look ready is really helpful for getting all those haul shots that you might want.
That's an excellent point, because there's a lot of times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that cosplay, but they look busy, and I hopefully I'll see them later. And I usually don't, but I didn't want to bother them.
Put pockets in your cosplay is a key for that. You want to look ready to go, like don't have your phone or your wallet or your power bar or whatever in your hand. Have it in a pocket, or make a handbag that matches your outfit.
That too.
Make a pocket on the back of your shield. I mean, my biggest thing for advice for beginners is it feels like there's a lot of gatekeeping about quality of costumes, and there really isn't. You can have just as much fun with a store-bought costume, with a closet cosplay, thrift store cosplay, as you can with somebody who has spent hundreds of hours sewing every stitch by hand. It's not whole cosplay is not a competition. And some of my favorite cosplays are ones that were incredibly simple and incredibly easy to pull off. The other advice I give to new people is it's amazing how much more forgiving people are if you're in a group. If you have a group of friends that can go out and be in similar costumes, you're going to get a lot more recognition and attention, and a lot more kind of forgiveness. It's not quite the right word, but it's easier to, go out as beginners in a group because you've got other friends with you that you can hang out with. And the more of you are that are similarly dressed, the more pictures you'll probably get taken of you and have that more positive experience.
Mine is practice your poses. Do it in the mirror. You'll or in your living room with your roommate or partner, just taking pictures on a phone. So you'll feel kind of silly, but you'll figure out your angles. You'll figure out what poses look good. You'll figure out definitely what not to do. Arching your back, don't do it. Like also, you don't tuck your chin. It makes your neck disappear. Like
turtle out.
don't do that. You'll learn those things. So yeah, do it in front of a mirror. Do it on a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
Figure that stuff out.
Yeah, as far as the practicing poses go, definitely practice with pictures because they can look different with your perspective in a mirror than the picture taken of you.
Yeah, definitely.
And advice for anyone wanting to get into cosplay photography, I definitely would say just get out there, work with, if you don't know anyone, if you're like just getting into the cosplay scene and you want to take pictures of people and you're like brand new, go to meetups because that's like, it's okay to take pictures of people there because they're there to get their picture taken and talk to other like-minded fans. Like that's a great place to start. And don't be afraid to take bad photos because when you're just starting out, your photos probably aren't going to be great, although it's a lot easier these days with much more forgiving equipment. And I think there's a lot of pressure to have like the perfect photos, whether you're taking them or you're a cosplayer and you feel like you have to have like the most amazing pro photos. Like you can take really fantastic photo shoots with cameras these days, like with phone cameras these days. Yep. And just like even if you don't know enough photographers and you want to get a photo shoot, like have your friends take pictures of you and maybe learn how to edit them. And editing them is the biggest key, right? Like if you want a photo to look better and you can learn how to edit them with Photoshop or Lightroom or any other kind of editing software, that will take a photo up automatically. When you're doing things to the colors and the contrast and anything like that, it already is going to make a photo more polished. So there's plenty of like resources on YouTube. You don't even necessarily have to go and take like expensive classes these days. And there's just a lot of opportunity. And then also just get to know other photographers in the community and they'll probably help you out.
For those first getting into cosplay, I'd say start small. Like so many people I've talked to are like, oh, I gotta build this whole, I'm like, no. Like find a character that's something simple and recognizable that you like and start there, or buy part of it or thrift part of it and then make one thing if you really want to make it. But you don't have to make everything from head to toe. You don't even have to have a completed cosplay. You could have like half of it and be missing the shoes. No one is going to notice. Like I guarantee you, no one will care. They'll just be really excited if you have the key component. Like focus on that. And then if it's expensive, like take your time. I've seen people do something where they start with one piece and they spend 5 years until they have the like amazing piece, but they did it at their own pace. So it's like, you don't have to make it in a week. You don't have to build everything. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars. Just go at your own pace. Like people will appreciate it. Like I've seen a kid in like a cardboard outfit, but I recognized that character and I lost my shit because I was like, oh my God, it's that character I love. And it made them so happy, but they look great. But you do it in your own pace. Like, yeah, it's totally okay. It's not a competition unless you're literally entering a competition. As far as cosplay photography, I'm going to echo what some others have said. Like, meetups are really great at con or like local ones that are hosted. There are lots of Facebook groups you can join that have advice, including vetting. Some of them have vetting like lists of photographers. Feel comfortable approaching photographers. Like if you see them on Instagram and you're like, oh, your stuff's really cool, I would love to like just talk with you. Like I made a friend with somebody who just wanted to chat about cosplay. Like that was it. We went out, had coffee, and talked about cosplay. So many people are so friendly and so willing to like do stuff that you shouldn't let that stop you from like trying it out. And if you want to do cosplay photography, like let's say you're just a cosplayer and you have a good cell phone, you know, do a shoot with your friends. It's a really good way for them to practice poses and you to practice photos. And if you have a photography friend, ask them if you can try their camera. Like I've actually, when doing shoots for other people, if I have friends who are nearby who are interested, I'm like, yeah, let's get you behind the camera. Like, or we did a group selfie thing where I was in some of the shots. So I actually had them, I directed them on how to shoot the photos. And that like got so many of them really jazzed because they'd never really done it before. And seeing how like the process worked was like really helpful for them. So it's like, don't be afraid to ask a photography friend to like show you the ropes and just try it, you know? So
I got to share a little anecdote based on what you said. I was on vacation with members of my competitive Harry Potter trivia team. We're called Martin, Miggs, and the Mad Muggles, and we win a lot. Anyway, we went to Hogwarts because of course we did, and we were hanging out, and we decided to take some boudoir pictures of a team member named Andrew, where he had a wand and a Harry Potter scarf. And that was it. And we did it on our phone. And then I sent it to my photographer friend, Nicole's husband. And I was like, look, I did a boudoir photo shoot send. He edited them for me and sent them back.
nice.
And they actually turned out really good.
And there are a lot of people who will actually do that. There's a lot of photographers I know who will offer editing, like sometimes for like a really cheap price or for a reasonable price. So it's like, yeah, you can get your photos edited. Like,
yeah, I've edited photos for people that I didn't take.
Well, I think Steven was just doing it to be funny because I sent him a picture to be funny, and he was like, yeah, look, I fixed it. Here you go. But Andrew actually has saved that picture. He looks pretty good.
Another point that I was going to make is kind of piggybacking off of some of the other points is you don't have to look like a pro, even if you've been cosplaying for a decade or more. Like, it's okay to just casually cosplay. And also, like, I cosplay on and off. I'm more a cosplay photographer, but I do cosplay sometimes. But I don't sew, I don't make mine. I either thrift them or I fully commission cosplays, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there is no one type of way to cosplay. And I think that's really great, but I think that also people forget that sometimes.
They do. And like, I actually, one of my friends who does a lot of competition stuff, like made a really good point that they were like, if I'm not entering this in a competition, why shouldn't I just buy it? And I'm like, yeah, save yourself some time and money, just buy it. Like, I've definitely, like, I was gonna do Miles Morales, and I was like, I could make the spider suit, and I did all the research, and then I found one for like $20, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah.
Just buy it. Like, it's okay. You can have one.
It was the best thing ever.
Well, and the other thing that we joke a lot about is, particularly if it's not competition, is it doesn't need to be perfect. Look at it from 6 feet away.
Yes.
If you don't see it from 6 feet away, no one else is going to see it either. Because that's how far back the photographer stands. That's how far back people stand.
Yep.
They're not going to be up there examining that seam to make sure it's 100% symmetrical to the whatever. I'm not a seamstress, you know, and that's, feel free to relax. And if it's not perfect, okay, just get it done. And if you want to come back to it later and make it better, then you've got that learning experience.
And also, don't point out what's wrong with your costume when somebody says something to you. If somebody says, you look great, don't say, oh, well, I messed up on this part and I messed up on that part. Don't say that. Say thank you.
Yeah.
That's all you gotta say.
No one cares how many times you mess up when you show your finished products. So, like, don't be afraid to fail. I have a really great friend who's getting into, like, armor building, and she's so hard on herself. And it's like, no one cares once you're done. Like, if you talk about the process, that's awesome. But also when you're done, and whenever that is, everyone's just going to be really impressed that you did that. So done is better than perfect.
Yes.
Yes, very much so.
And adding to that point,
That is, it's not perfect, but it's done.
Yeah.
exactly. And I think adding to that point is that we forget that people that are you know, have been cosplaying longer than us, or like maybe are really good at like armor building, we forget that they probably also remade those pieces several times or had to work on it. Like we only realize it about ourselves. Like those other people are probably redid it just as many times. And again, no one cares about that process, just the final result. So remember that and be kinder to yourself as well.
Yeah.
One thing I tell people is do not compare your first project to somebody else's 30th project. It's not the same.
Oh my
I had
God.
a friend who said, oh, I made this dress and it took me 3 weeks and it only would have taken you a weekend. And it's like, I've been sewing since I'm 10.
Exactly.
Like,
Like,
yeah, it only would
don't
take me a
know.
weekend, but I've been doing this for 20 years.
like you don't know
Implies
what
I'm
someone's
30, which I'm not.
process
I'm
might
40.
be.
Sorry.
Like you don't know what someone's process might be like, and then sometimes it might take them a weekend, and then the next project took them 5 months because they messed it up 50 times. Like you literally don't know. It's like the best thing you can do is compare your first project to your next project. Don't compare it to anyone else, like at all, because you don't know what their circumstances are.
When Abby asked for our first cosplay for the photo panel, I was like going through my photos and like, oh my goodness, I still have this picture of this Columbia. And I literally made that by gluing fabric onto something else. And, you know, it was, I mean, I found like this blazer at Goodwill and I glued the sequin fabric and cut out it was made with Elmer's glue. And I ended up giving it away to somebody at a garage sale or something, and they came to a Halloween party at my house wearing it, and they sold it to a friend of their friend who had purchased it. And I'm like, oh my God, this Columbia costume is back in my... And I was like looking at this, and I'm like looking and comparing it, and I'm like, this, you know, just seeing the difference. And I probably didn't buy a sewing machine until, 3 years ago, Abby? When did I start actually sewing my own cosplays?
You sewed, you sewed your Jareth jacket, which I think is an insane first project to take on. And she did a beautiful job. She used silk and then hand beaded that collar and cuff. It was insane. But when was that? That was 3-4 years ago?
4 years, yeah. I think the first one I actually sewed was my Idris from Doctor Who.
That was before we were friends.
Yeah. So... and you know, my friend was like, most people start with an A-line skirt. You start with a bustle skirt. Okay.
Oh my God.
My first sewing project, I was 10 and I made an elastic waistband skirt. It's like a pillowcase with the top not sewed together.
And, you know, the way that I look at it is my friends, you know, I have Abby, who's a great seamstress as a friend, and I have another friend that's a great seamstress, and they'll look at it and they're like, well, that's not the way I would have done it, but it's done.
But you got there.
Yeah.
One can tell because
clothes
it's
are on your
6
body.
feet away, and they've held up through multiple washings, so that's a win.
Yeah. So
not that I would ever wash that Jareth coat, but
no. That Jareth coat should be in a safe deposit box. It is just so a couple last things I want to just go over before we wrap it up, because we have been talking for a while. I want to know, what has been your favorite moment or experience as a cosplayer or photographer? What is the thing that made you think, this is why I do this, this is why I will continue to do this? And
for us, I mean, for me, it was the first time that we brought Totoro out on the floor at Dragon Con. Going from the let's build a Totoro, what in the world is a Totoro, and coming up and building this 8-foot tall movable, you know, Totoro. And the first time we took him out on the floor and just the reactions that we got. And even though I wasn't in the costume, I was just there as a support handler, just watching the reactions and thinking I had something to do with this. And there's just, you know, bringing a character that people love out there and having people rush up and try to give him hugs, and people were crying. I mean, it was, you know, every time it's like, that's why we do it, bringing that joy to people, seeing the smiles on their faces, seeing these grown men jumping up and down crying. That's that was probably my favorite moment.
I'm just gonna go down. Tans.
Oh, okay. I really like the moment you first see yourself all in costume. Like, I haven't cosplayed since the pandemic started, and just getting into bow today, and then like looking at myself, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, you just get a little taller, like, and you're like, I made this, or I put this together, and I like how I look. It's really a great way. I don't know. It just feels so cool. I love dressing up.
It is so fun. And Natasha?
Okay, so for me, I guess for like cosplaying, I don't have particular moments, but I get for like the cosplaying, it would be just that moment of like, for each one of like, oh wow, I get to be a different person for a while, and I get to live a different life for a little bit, and that's amazing. And as for cosplay photography, I think it would be every time someone turns to me after looking at a photo, be it like on the back of the camera preview and showing them during the shoot, or after they've received final edits, and they go, I didn't know that I could look that amazing. Thank you so much for making me look good. And I tell them, you already looked that good. I just helped capture it. And just bringing people more self-confidence and joy, it's like, oh wow. Because I used to think just like, oh, I just run around with a camera and take pictures of costumes, but like there's so much more to it. And kind of, I guess the moment of realizing that, and just like, oh wow, I can have a profound impact on people with the pictures I take. And that's pretty rad. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about you, Jamila?
I'm gonna echo the same thing with the photography part. Like, my favorite part is turning the camera around and letting them see the photos.
Yeah.
And they just get like super stoked because I'm just like, yay! And they're like, I look amazing. I'm like, you do. Like, you have no idea. You look really amazing. That's definitely one of my favorite things. As far as cosplay, like, I think one of my favorite things is like just doing group cosplays, because there's something like really exciting about like running into all the people in your group. Like, I was in a group with Tans. We did this giant Sailor Moon group, and we couldn't find each other for a while. We were all like lost, but like once we all gathered together, it was just like this like insane level of excitement, and everybody was just like, oh, Sailor Moon, Sailor Moon, and we were just like, it was like the best moment ever. It was just like, it was so good. Like, that's just like one of my favorite things. It's like you're with a bunch of people who all love the same thing, and you're just vibing, and you couldn't give a shit about what's happening in the world. You're just like, this is it. This is happiness. I hope it never ends.
I agree. There's definitely something very magical about when you finally get that group all together, fully done up in a room, and you're like, we did this. We put this together.
The day we got all 13 doctors together, and it was just like, we did this.
With groups, also my favorite thing is walking through the con, and especially with groups that are maybe a little more niche, like the people in the front, they don't get the reactions, but like 3 or 4 people back, when people have seen 3 or 4 people pass them, and it's like they're like, oh my gosh, you're Hogwarts Heathers, or oh my gosh, you're from Robin Hood Men in Tights. There's all of you. Like,
all of you.
That dawning realization is so much fun.
And I think the other part that's just so amazing is that that time that someone says, let's try to do this. I mean, like, there's no way. But then you start thinking about it, and this little idea keeps percolating. And about 4 months later, someone's, I figured out how we can do that part of it. I mean, when we pulled off the gentleman from Buffy, it was, and then going around the con completely in character and not saying a word. I mean, just the reactions was amazing. And it was so much fun. And that was, people were actually terrified and would walk away from us because they didn't want us to get too close to them. But trying to, figure it, spending that time practicing with the prosthetics and practicing with the makeup, and then actually pulling it off on the con floor was just, it was so much fun.
My favorite is actually my very first cosplay experience. I had never been to a con. I had never cosplayed. I had watched Heroes of Cosplay, and my husband bought tickets to a con, and I thought everybody cosplayed. I thought that was what you did. So I borrowed a wig from a friend. I made a little dress, and I was going to be Rainbow Dash. Never watched the show, not once. And as we're getting out of the car, my husband, who had also never watched the show, he's just like, who even are you? We don't know. Why are you wearing that? And then I get out and I walk around and people react like you're a celebrity. They're like, it's Rainbow Dash and I love you. And then they would do like bro hoof, which I didn't know what it meant, which is why you always do a little bit of research, just a little. You don't need to know everything, just know a little bit. But I was hooked getting out of the car the first time somebody recognized me. And I was like, I'm not going to stop. This is going to be something that takes over my life and my house and my
here
budget.
we are.
Yeah. So I kind of like to get a little nosy up in your business, and I want to know, what is your cosplay dirty secret? Like, what is the thing that when nobody watches you do? And I'll start if you want me to.
Go for
Go
it.
for it.
I don't pick up pins when I drop them. If you walk in my studio in your bare feet, that's your fault. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I also
Oh.
have pulled scrap fabric out of the garbage can and blown my nose with it.
I hate ironing. I hate it with a passion. I will do anything if I do not have to iron, and I am notorious for never ironing my seams, never ironing anything when I'm sewing. I'll actually take pictures when I have the ironing board out and send it to a few friends. Look, I ironed this, because I never iron.
Oh my gosh.
I leave my bobby pins in my wig. I pretty much just like yeet it off my head and then just store them. It's terrible. And I'll be like, but they're there when I need them next time.
But you also just fessed up that you don't brush them after you wear them.
Some of them are curly. It's hard. I mean, I'll brush them the next time I wear them.
Maybe.
Maybe. Depending.
You give them a little shake.
Shake them out. They're like, yay! And then also, I hate sewing hems on skirts. So I will get that press and seam. I will just iron that. It counts. It's fine.
Tans.
I sew over my pins.
Oh no. Shame. Know your name.
Sorry. Naughty.
And what about you, Natasha? Fess up.
I mean, well, I don't have any sewing related ones. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of like what would be like a dirty secret for photography, but like I can't really think of.
How big is your backlog?
Oh,
Oh, you went there. No.
you went there, didn't you?
Yeah.
How big was it before the pandemic?
That's a good question, yeah.
Okay. So for client work, I try not to let it get very far, but for like personal things, free shoots, or like my own personal stuff, like taking pictures of Pride Parade, it's 3 years long.
I thought I was bad. Damn. Okay.
It's much better now. It's more like 2 years. And I should mention that that's not like all just like full years of photos. It's more like there are certain photos that can go back that far, but it's not like I skipped editing photos for 3 solid years. Man, you really came for me.
Sorry about that. If you really want to know how naughty I am, I'll show you my fabric stash. It's embarrassing.
I think every photographer probably has a pretty sizable backlog, whether they like to admit it or not.
So we have been chatting for a while, so I think it's probably a great time to wrap up. But when I do that, or before I do that, I want to give all of you a chance to plug your own social media, and also give us an opportunity to learn about other queer creators or just really great creators that you want us to know about. So one more time through your names. We'll start with Nicolle.
Oh, okay. Team Totoro Cosplay. We are on Facebook and on Instagram. Not super active because, again, we're not here we don't really get into the social media. It's just kind of a place for us to put our photos. But feel free to chat with us. I will do a plug for my husband. I feel like I'm obligated to as a photographer, Geek Slayer Photography. And he
took a lot of the pictures that were on both of our introduction pages.
And he's more than happy to do cosplay boudoir, and as many recommendations if you're interested in that. I don't typically follow a lot of other creators unless I'm personally friends with them. I do follow a lot of pages of various content. Lately, I've been really enjoying POC cosplayers on Facebook, as well as Cosplay Your Way on Facebook. So I'll give a plug out to those two Facebook groups, just as ones that people may not be following or aware of.
Okay, and Tans?
You can find me on Twitter at Tansuru. We'll probably have to spell that out. And for another creator, I'm going to shout out Chibi Magi Girl on Twitter. She has a huge list of like all the Black cosplayers, photographers, creators that you can go to. She's also great at cosplay, and she does great giveaways too. So.
And Natasha, what about you?
Well, I'm Fearless Photoworks. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. And I would have to give a shout out to some other femme photographers, which are Pretty Prism Photography, Reality Photography, and Estelia Photography. And also, I do cosplay photography, but I also do regular portraits and family portraits, weddings. I do photo booths and other things. So if you're looking for a photographer and not just cosplay, look me up.
So mine is Black Bettie Cosplay. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, many things. Just start at one of them and you find the rest. And I also do photography. That one's under Light Plus Ink. And I do art photography as well as cosplay and then portrait work. So that's like another thing I do. And then I'm going to shout out a good friend of mine, Dolly Darling Cosplay, who's amazing. And actually was one of the people who really got me really into cosplay, like after I just kind of started as a baby, and then like took me under their wing and kind of really helped me like meet a lot of people. And they're absolutely amazing cosplayer, really talented if you love Borderlands stuff. So definitely check them out.
And I'm AbbyCat Cosplay. That's what you can find me under on Instagram, as well as Facebook, technically Twitter too, although I think the last tweet I made was like 5 years ago. And I would love to plug Laurie Sunrise. She is Things by Laurie Sunrise. She is just an incredible corset maker, and she teaches classes and also does custom work, and it's the kind where if you want a corset that fits your body, that feels comfortable, that is perfectly made for you, she's the one to go to do that, or to talk to.
She helped me make a corset that I wore at Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh, damn.
Comfortably.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
No,
Okay.
it's like she talks about measuring to like the 1/8 of an inch and stuff when she does her patterns. It's pretty incredible. And so we do also just lastly have to once again plug the SheProp community. So find us on Facebook. If you are a woman, if you are trans, if you are non-binary, if you are a maker or wanting to become a maker, there is a community here that will help you do that. And we're also really great. So join us in the SheProp community. And once again, thank you to AwesomeCon, Rose City Comic Con, LeftField Media, and Geeks Out for inviting us to do this panel and for hosting this digital Pride event. So thank you all. Thank all of our panelists, and thank everybody for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.